Yes, people, yes, people, yes, people. Welcome back to the We Talk Football podcast. It took an entire season for me to get a microphone, but I've got one. Kwaku, how does it feel to have a full season under the belt with your own podcast?
Yeah, well, it's the season's not over yet for Chelsea. Of course, we're in the Champions League final, so yeah, for the rest of the world, the season's over. But for Chelsea and Man City, yeah, we've got the biggest game of football coming up. But yeah, it's been good. Obviously, it's been we started the podcast in October last year,
September, I think. I think it
or
was September.
September last year,
Mm.
just before the season was about to start. On the day this new season started,
Yeah, because we like even that was that fell apart because we wanted to get the first episode out before and realized
it
we
takes
didn't have the capabilities. So
So it's been a crazy season from where it started. Liverpool looking like the prohibitive favourites to win the league, and then we saw what happened to them. We kicked off the podcast with talking about Gareth Bale coming in, talking about Thiago coming in. So it's been a whirlwind of the season. It feels like ages ago since it started. So many managers have come and gone, mainly Frank Lampard. And yeah, man, it's been a whirlwind. There's been an odd one as well about the fans. I feel like within that season of football, the online community of football has really expanded in terms of different people maybe starting podcasts or starting Instagram pages because people can't actually be in the ground, so people are living through it vicariously online. So yeah, it's been an interesting season, but I'm happy that it's in the books now.
No, I totally agree, mate. I think me and you need to do at some point. We need to do I'm gonna sort my light out. We need to do a reaction to our videos because I think some of the things we said in the first episode. Well, it was pre-Talksport Kwaku, and it was also us, finding our feet and saying outlandish things like, what my golden boot prediction was Werner, yours was Aubameyang. Couldn't have gone any worse, really. But yeah, talking about the weekend of football, incredible weekend. Premier League didn't let us down. I'm actually sad that we don't have Premier League football to watch for a couple of months. The one thing I would say though, mate, you have got the big game coming up, but is your season already over? Because watching City on the weekend, mate, it's fairy tales if Aguero plays. What do you think?
So Chelsea tripped and stumbled their way into the Champions League. I would say maybe like when we started making our top four predictions about 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, I did say that it was going to end up being the way that it was, but Chelsea ahead of Liverpool as opposed to the other way around. But the way that we got into it doesn't leave any Chelsea fans satisfied. We didn't look very good against Aston Villa. We haven't looked very good in the last couple of weeks, barring the result against Leicester, which ultimately turned out to be the result that got us into the top four. But yesterday was another poor showing. It showed us exactly what Chelsea need in the transfer window in terms of a striker that can score goals. I know it wasn't Timo Werner's fault for being offside for the goal because it was Aspilicueta was offside, but it's just indicative of how his season's gone. And yeah, we weren't very good, man. It's troubling times in terms of going into a Champions League final against a Man City team, like you say, that are purring.
They looked great as well. Like the Aguero, it was poetic the way he came on for 25 minutes, scores 2 goals, 2 outrageous goals, by the way. And
at the same end that he scored his famous goal.
So exactly,
it was a great ending for one of the Premier League's greatest ever players. It was a wild weekend, wild day of football in terms of Premier League. Obviously, all eyes were on the Leicester versus Spurs game, the Liverpool versus Palace game, and the Chelsea or Aston Villa versus Chelsea game. And it didn't disappoint. It was a roller coaster of emotions at different points. Each team was in and out of the top four. And ultimately, it turned out Liverpool finished third and Chelsea finished fourth. And Leicester, for a second year in a row, miss out on top four.
Yeah, well, I feel that we've got so much to speak about here. But first of all, shout out to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I never thought I'd say that. I think Man United became the 4th side ever to not lose a game away from home in a single season. Fair play to Man United. They've been quite easily the second best team in the league this year, and Man City have been better than everyone else. Liverpool finishing 3rd. How has that happened? We've been preying on their downfall all season. Literally preying on their downfall. That's an unbelievable job. Like, let's be honest, because they've played an entire Premier League season with, with so many different combinations at the back, like with injuries all over the park, and they've managed to finish 3rd in the league, above a team like Chelsea, above a team like Leicester that were, that have spent large portions of the season, up there. So how Liverpool have managed to put it out, I think their last 10 games have had 8 wins and two draws. Says it all, really.
I'll give them credit for how they've overcome the mid-season turmoil, but judging by how far ahead they were of everybody else last season, I don't know how much credit you can give them. I can give them credit for that being clutch in the running towards the end of the season. But the reason why we're giving them so much credit now is because they were so dreadful at a point. They lost like how many home games in a row?
Yeah. No, to be fair, I think they lost. They hadn't lost it in like what 60, 70 games or something like that. Then they lost 2 or 3 in a row. I remember they lost to Burnley, Fulham. I totally agree with you. I just think to cope with the level of injuries they've had throughout the season and to then pull out third this season, we've been preying on their downfall all year. I think we have to appreciate that that's an unbelievable achievement by Jurgen Klopp, and fair play to him. How have they finished above Chelsea? How have they finished above Leicester? It's a crazy achievement. You just have to give them props. Same with Man United, and I'll hold the L on that one because I said, as the immortal words of our first ever podcast, Ollie the cuck. Ollie is not a cuck. Ollie at the wheel, and he seems to be doing well. They've got a Europa League final in a few days' time, so I mean, and they look good. They actually look good. Outside their first 11 is questionable, but fair play to United, fair play to Liverpool for bolstering out the top 4. And ultimately, I was saying to you off camera, I was angry yesterday that Chelsea had got in by proxy, but ultimately it comes down to Leicester, doesn't it? Leicester had it in their own hands. They were leading. They threw the game away. And it's a game of fine margins. If you don't do enough to get over the line, the game doesn't end at the 80th minute. If you don't play those last 15 minutes, then you know what I mean? And over a 38 game season, Chelsea are 4th because they did enough to get 4th, So
I think if you're a Leicester fan, you're going to look back at the Chelsea game at Stamford Bridge last week, where Brendan Rodgers changed up how he usually manages. They were a Leicester team that looked to contain Chelsea. And although Chelsea did look good, I think Leicester facilitated that. And Brendan Rodgers' teams are always best when they're on the front foot. If you look at Celtic team, obviously it's different in Celtic or in Scotland because Celtic are the most dominant team. Yeah. But if you look at his Liverpool team and if you look at his Swansea team, there were teams that were good on the front foot. But when he managed against Chelsea last week, it was a team that was looking to contain and not lose it, as opposed to trying and going out there and winning it. And you saw, case in point, Ian Nacho was on the bench against Chelsea. He comes off the bench and scores a goal. If he starts that game, it might go a bit differently. So I think Leicester will look back at that Chelsea game at Stamford Bridge as where they probably lost the top 4. But ultimately, if you're a Leicester fan, if they were to ask Leicester fans at the beginning of the season, would you rather win the FA Cup or finish in the top 4? I think they take a trophy because the trophy lives forever and top 4 place only lives for a season.
No, I totally agree with you. And as much as the top 4 has become a modern trophy for a lot of sides, I don't think Leicester fans are unhappy with how their season's gone. One interesting statistic about Leicester, though, Leicester have actually played more centre-back partnerships than Liverpool this year because they've been so ravaged with injuries throughout the year. That they've to even finish 5th and maintain a strong push on the Premier League top 4. Fair play to Leicester. It's hard on them because the last 2 seasons they've dropped out the top 4 on the last day. I think I saw a statistic somewhere that they've been in the top 4 for 93% of the last 2 seasons, which is crazy. But if you really want to look at the bright side, Leicester in the Champions League, you would say they haven't got much of a chance of winning it. But you put Leicester with the current squad they've got, maybe with a chance to actually build on that squad as well. I think they could do well in the Europa League. I think they're strong enough to do that. You look at who's in the final. I think they could give Man United a run for their money at the moment. So yeah, I don't think necessarily being in the Europa League for another year for Leicester is the worst thing for them. And speaking of the other team in the Europa League, my boys, we did enough. Do you know what I mean? We're clutch.
Yeah.
David Moyes, give him manager of the season. I'm no joke. Give him manager of the season. I know Pep Guardiola is going to be having shouts because Man City, they looked out of it at the start of the season and they've come back and been, just outstanding. Let's be honest. But to go from, my expectations of West Ham, the general fan expectations of West Ham, if you'd have asked the board at the start of the season, do they expect a top 6 finish? I think they would have, laughed in your face. The fact of the matter is, David Moyes has been astute in the transfer market. He's brought in some solid players. Everyone's performed and hit the ground running. And we finished sixth in the Premier League, not through luck, not by chance, through sheer consistency, through sheer performances. There's a reason we've finished above, like Arsenal, Tottenham. There's a reason we're above these teams, because we've performed over a 38-game season, and it's incredible. I think it's the first time we've finished in the top six since 1999. I'm not used to it. You know what I mean? This is arguably my greatest ever season as a West Ham fan, and it coincided where I got to speak about it on the internet. So I'm a happy hammer right now, mate.
Yeah, no. West Ham have been great this season. That was the game I was working at work, or covering at work, and I say covering, producing at work, and that was like it was probably the most boring game, because you just knew how it was going to go. West Ham beat the teams that West Ham was supposed to beat in this season. And when Fornal scored the first goal and then the second shortly followed, it was where you knew West Ham were going to be home and host. And then to top it all off, it kind of encapsulated West Ham season as a whole. Mr. West Ham, their captain for most of the games of the season, scores a great goal, Declan Rice, to seal what has been an incredible season for West Ham. You've been consistent. You've not lost the games that you would have lost last season, and fair play. You've maybe lost to the bigger teams in games that are frustrated for West Ham fans, when you feel like you could go for it a little bit more. You've beaten the teams you're supposed to beat, and that's all you can ask as a West Ham fan. A top six season, or top six finish in a season where Liverpool, you finish ahead of Liverpool, finish ahead of Arsenal, you finish ahead of Tottenham. You can't complain as a West Ham fan.
No, I'm very, very happy. Like I said, throughout the season, there's been games where I've been annoyed. Especially the Liverpool game, the Chelsea games weren't ideal. But yeah, ultimately we finished 3 points off fifth, I think. And it's just an unbelievable season. I really can't complain. Drawing on Declan Rice. Declan Rice, to me, has really grown as a player this year. I think the rest of the footballing world are now starting to see how good of a player Declan Rice is. He's even getting recognised from pundits about how he's going to be an important role, or play an important role in the Euros this summer. He just looked class yesterday. He just looks so good, and it's quite a good feeling for me that we have got European football, because I think that increases our chances of keeping hold of him for at least another season, and I think it increases the chances of us bringing in Jesse Lingard and being able to bolster the squad a little bit more. So I really can't complain. I don't think today would be the time for me to complain about anything as a West Ham fan. I think I just have to sit here and appreciate that, we're sixth in the Premier League. We finished sixth in the Premier League. It's all rosy. It was a great performance. And if I'm honest, as good as we were yesterday, I thought Southampton were awful, absolutely awful. And I didn't realise how bad they'd been for the second half of the season, because we don't always cover Southampton as much as the big teams. But mate, I think other than in this calendar year, I think other than Fulham, I think they're the lowest team to accumulate any points. I think they've got the second worst defence in the league. I think they've conceded 68 goals. Even in the first half yesterday, they should have scored 2 goals. And they just didn't. They looked blunt going forward, and they looked suspect at the back. Absolutely suspect.
They're Southampton, if they're not careful, could be in trouble, because Dan Ings obviously is making the noise about if a Manchester club comes in for him, then he'd be more happy to leave. I think that Manchester United would become a good move for Dan Ings, a good move for Manchester United, whilst Mason Greenwood develops, as opposed to what they've previously done and gone and got big name signings. So don't be surprised to see Dan Ings go somewhere like that. And if he does, then Southampton will be in big trouble. Obviously, players like Minamino are going to go back to their parent clubs. And yesterday they were bang average.
I don't think they were average, mate. I think they were awful. They were really bad.
Poor from the side.
Drawing on Danny Ings, though, it's an interesting point. I was talking to Ben Glander, friend of the channel, and I think he looked sharp yesterday. He was definitely a bright spark in the Southampton side. He just didn't have any opportunities, really. Do you see him going to a big club then? Because I kind of see him at a level maybe just below the top 4. For example, if West Ham went for him, I'd be over the moon. I don't think it would happen, but I could see him going to a Tottenham, somewhere around that level at the moment. Do you really see him going to a Man United?
Well, the thing is, apparently, I don't know how true it is. There's like a gentleman's agreement that the only clubs that Southampton will let him go to is one of the Manchester clubs. I don't know how true or how valid that is, but I could see him. I think Manchester United right now are waiting on the development of Mason Greenwood, and I think they'd be stupid to go out and spend unless our Haaland becomes available and is feasible to go and get. I feel like Mason Greenwood is a long-term answer for Manchester United down the middle, and Cavani signing a new contract just gives me Greenwood a bit more time to develop whilst you've got somebody there who can score goals for you in the interim. So to bring in someone like, maybe if you get rid of Martial, get him off your wage books and bring in Danny Ings, who's probably going to be on like, I don't know, 2/3 of what Martial will be on in terms of wages. Then I feel like that would be a good move because he's a wily player that can score goals and can get. You saw like when he was obviously at Liverpool, it was a bit difficult for him because he went through horrendous injury troubles. But you saw when he was fit, he could score you goals, even though he wasn't the primary option. So I think Manchester United would be a good move for someone like Danny Ings. I think it'd be a good move for Manchester United. But again, it's going to be a striker merry-go-round this summer, and depends on where chips fall.
No, I totally agree. And looking at Man United, I don't even think they need a striker because I think Cavani has done the job this year. I in signing the contract extension, I don't know if he signs that if he's not given the assurances that he's the number one man there for at least another year. Obviously, it's well known that Mason Greenwood is very highly rated at United. Even yesterday, they brought on a load of youngsters. They've got Amad Diallo. Alanga scored his first goal on his debut, so shout out to him. So yeah, I don't think Man United necessarily need a striker. I think they might have a need for more of a defensive midfielder, like most teams in the Premier League, and maybe another centre back. But Man United look like a solid prospect. So I just don't know if they need him. But speaking of them, the strikers merry-go-round, obviously Harry Kane again winning the Golden Boot for the third time on the trot. I don't know if you saw the scenes at the end of the game with the hugs with Dele Alli and that. It did look there was a finality to it, wasn't there?
Yeah. I think Harry Kane's leaving. He's made it well known. He did that overlap interview with Gary Neville, which you don't do an hour-long interview, kind of alluding to the fact that you want to go and win the biggest trophies in football while playing for a club that's not going to provide that for you, and it not mean something. So I think everybody kind of accepts it and knows that Harry Kane will be on his way. I think Manchester is the most likely destination, and Man City are the team that looks like they're going to bring in Harry Kane. Which I had an interesting conversation with one of my friends yesterday about that. And I don't know how into basketball most of our viewers are, but it smells like Kevin Durant to Golden State Warriors with Harry Kane going to Man City. It's like Man City, if Man City go and win the Champions League this season, I get it. Harry Kane can go there and just solidify what they do and win more and more trophies. But I feel like his legacy will be better served going to a team that's on the precipice, like a Manchester United, and going and bringing. I think one Premier League title at Manchester United will mean about 2 or 3 at Man City, just because Man City are already the best team in the world without a striker. But like, you can't begrudge Harry Kane for wanting to go to somewhere where he's guaranteed to win trophies, because he's done enough in football. He's got top goal scorer for the last 7 seasons. He's carried that club on his back. Managers have come and gone, but Harry Kane stayed, and it looks like at the right time for him to move. So I back and rate the fact that he's actually pushing for the move, because a lot of us thought that he wouldn't. And Daniel Levy is going to have to sell, because all parties want this to happen.
I think that it's an interesting narrative comparing it to the KD transfer saga a few years ago with Golden State. For me, I don't see it as much, because I feel like football is behind Harry Kane. I think everyone that isn't a Tottenham fan still wants Harry Kane to succeed and go win trophies, and even potentially push for that record. I think if it was Mohamed Salah going to Man City, I think it would be more KD vibes, But I totally agree. I think if he goes to City, I really worry for the Premier League for the next 2-3 seasons. I don't know how anyone's going to challenge, because with the emergence of Phil Foden this year, with how good City have just looked all over the pitch, with Diaz, like, who beats them next year if they put Harry Kane, as a crown jewel on their forwards? It's just going to be. I just can't wait for the next Premier League season now. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a laugh. The one thing I will say is I actually think Harry Kane could still be there at the start of next season, because I think this is going to be a very long, drawn out transfer saga. Like you said, I think everyone expects Harry Kane to leave, but I think it's going to be on the conditions that, you know, certain transfer demands are met. You know, Daniel Levy is traditionally very frugal in the market. He wants to get the best profit for Tottenham. You know, like look at the Dimitar Berbatov transfer saga years ago. That went down on the last day. You know, Gareth Bale leaving Tottenham required a world transfer fee. You know, I can't see this Harry Kane being as just close the book and done. I think it's going to be a long drawn out process, and it's just going to be an exciting summer for football.
Yeah, it will be. I actually completely see where you're coming from. I just think from Harry Kane's point of view, in terms of if you listen to how he prepares himself and how he kind of is very rigid and organized in his self-preparation, I feel like he'd want to get this deal done and dusted as quick as possible. And I think the Spurs owe him that. I think Spurs do owe him that. I feel like, I know it's Daniel Levy and sentiment.
I agree, though. I agree with you totally. I agree with you.
I don't think that we're going to see the best of Harry Kane at Man City, if it is to be Man City, if he's not got a full preseason in the squad. Because we know how technical Pep Guardiola is. It's not a case of he just puts men out on the field and they're going to do a job. Like, there are movements and patterns and triggers that Pep Guardiola has to instill into his players, and I don't think you get that with not having a preseason with the club. So from Pep's point of view, I think he want to get Harry Kane in early. I think Harry Kane will want to get in there early. The only person that can stop that deal happening early is Daniel Levy.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. And maybe Pep's got the answer for getting Kane firing in August, because we all know he doesn't really, turn up at the start of seasons. But yeah, I as much as I agree with you, I think Spurs will. Well, there's two sides to the sword, isn't there? Or two sides to the coin, whatever you want to say. Some people would say that, Spurs owe him, or he doesn't owe Spurs anything. They should be able to let him get out the exit door as soon as possible. But other people will say, or Daniel Levy will say, we have paid your wages, we've paid you to do a job. So
yeah,
it's going to be a difficult one. I can't see it being easy because, like I said, Daniel Levy is traditionally frugal, very, very astute in the market, and ultimately does the best financial deal for Tottenham. So it's going to be a mad one. It's going to be a mad one. But let's talk Chelsea though, because we haven't really spoken much Chelsea. I know the episode's getting on, but this is more of like a summation of the entire year. So it feels like we're rounding a lot of points that we've been building up for a lot of time. What's next for Chelsea? Obviously, I've been saying for a while, that I really, really don't rate Werner as much as he showed in the Bundesliga, and I think it's fair to say that he has been fairly underwhelming. Now, in saying that, I am also appreciative of the fact that he offers a lot of things for the team. He tracks back, he presses sides, but ultimately, the detriment of this Chelsea side, from my perspective, from an outsider's neutral perspective, has been that, you just haven't scored enough goals this year. I think your top scorer in the league is Jorginho, and I think most of them come from penalties. I think for Chelsea really to kick on to the next stage, and you can argue that, you've finished fourth, you've got to a cup final, and you're now in the Champions League final. You can argue that you have progressed this season, but to progress even further, it has to be goals, surely. It has to be.
Yeah, that's where the Chelsea team needs to develop and needs to improve. It's not just up front though; it's the spine of the team. We've not really had this proper spine since JT, Frank Lampard, and Didier Drogba walked out the door. So if you look at Chelsea, like, a lot of our play comes from wide areas, but then there's nothing in the middle to kind of solidify that. So if you look at our centre midfielders, I love N'Golo Kante, but we haven't got that midfielder that can provide us goals and as a true box-to-box midfielder. And I feel like that's important in the modern Premier League.
Yeah.
Haven't got a striker, and in our centre backs, it's a revolving door. Like, I don't think you ever see the best teams in the world have such a kind of merry-go-round of centre backs. You have a solid partnership. And so we're lacking in down the middle for Chelsea, but the biggest issue is a striker. Case in point, yesterday, Chelsea were on top for the first 20 minutes, absolutely dominated, didn't give Aston Villa a sniff. But I think all Chelsea fans are sitting back and knowing that they're going to score, or the game's going to turn because we haven't scored a goal, we haven't capitalised on our dominance. So the biggest issue for Chelsea is scoring goals. But the problem is strikers are at a premium. There's only a few world-class strikers in the world, and I think the striker that Chelsea bring in needs to be world-class. So that's our problem.
Well, I think It's as important it is about the players that you bring in this year. I think it's, oh sorry, this summer. I think it's also who goes out the exit door is equally important for you, because I feel that you've got a lot of players out on loan, and you've got a lot of players that just aren't playing. You know, I think the futures of people like Fikayo Tomori, Loftus Cheek, Ross Barkley, Tammy Abraham. I think these are all players that that Tuchel has really got to like assess their next steps and assess their next moves. And if you facilitate moves for them, some of them are going to command some handsome fees. So you're going to get some some decent money in for that, and that could facilitate bolstering other parts of the squad. But I do think it's important for you to get these
Yeah,
players out.
I think it's clear the players that Chelsea want to let go or are going to get let go. Like, you know, Giroud's going, you know that Tammy Abraham's going, you know the players, you know Loftus Cheek's not going to come back and play for Chelsea. So like with it, the only question mark you have is like, is Tomori going to come back and play? Apart from that, I think it's kind of clearly well defined in terms of players that are going to be in and out the door. You get rid of one of the left backs, and yeah, so it's so frustrating because I should be happy that we're in the top four, but the way that we performed and the way that it's so glaring what our biggest issue is, doesn't fill me with the most confidence going into the Champions League final next week.
Especially, yeah, because in recent games it's been questionable form, to say the least. But the one benefit that you have is that with it being a one-off game, you can it's backs to the wall. I think you're going in with the underdog mentality. I think most football fans will expect Man City to walk you over, but it's one of those games where anything can happen in the final. Like, testament to what happened against Bayern Munich all those years ago for Chelsea. So yeah, Quakey, for the final time of this Premier League season, where can they find us?
You can find us on YouTube as We Talk Football Podcast. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the We Talk Football Podcast. Although the Premier League season is finishing, we are going to be continuing with more regular videos throughout the week. So just make sure you check out our channel. We're on Instagram at We Talk Football Podcasts. We're on Twitter at WTF Podcast 90. We're on TikTok, but that's just a myth at the moment. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. So make sure you check us out on all those platforms, and we will be back with more content very, very soon.
Sick. Cheers, guys, and catch you next time.